Choosing the life you want to live, even if it's really uncomfortable, feels better than staying in comfort that doesn't fulfill. This is Wandering the Wild Mess with Heather Morgan, and I am so happy you're here. Today's episode, I want to touch on just really kind of a big thing that has really shifted my perspective, and I touched on it before, but why I'm even in this place, because sometimes I often think to myself, when people make big life changes or decisions, like what drives that, right? And the more I think about where I went in my life and why I decided to change so much of it, which still to me feels surreal in ways, I really always relate it back to the idea of we just don't know how much time we have left. So I had touched on my father before, but losing him probably impacted my life more than anything else that's ever happened to me. And like I said, it was when I was fairly younger. My dad passed away at 49 unexpectedly. And it really, looking back, changed so much of my view. At the time, there was a lot that was different, but even now, thinking about how we just don't know when our time's up. And when my dad was 25, he was midlife. That was the middle of his life at that point in time, but he didn't know it. And when you think about our days like that, I think we can cherish them a little differently, or think about the time that we're spending and what we're doing and who we're spending it with and what kind of things we want to do with our days differently when we feel like we have less of them. And because my dad passed away so young, that really impacted how I viewed the time I have here on this earth. So I want to quote just a one of my as a I love music if you've listened to me at all. So Zach Bryan has a song, "The Greatest Day of My Life." And there's a line that says, "Years are just moments in a great big pile." And that song he solo wrote, and it's very just kind of one of those self-reflecting songs about everything going on in life. But I think before I go into kind of the story that's feeding this, there's lyrics that say, "When I was too young to really know the difference in love and longing for it, when to shut up and when to stay with it, how to forgive and just let go." And I feel like that's just such a true statement when you're navigating life and just trying to figure out like why you're making certain decisions that you're making. Are you making them for you? Are you making decisions that really fuel your soul? Or, I mean, do you even know? Again, I've talked about this with y'all, and I think we all, hopefully, everyone can be in agreement that nobody knows what they're doing. Everyone's just trying to figure it out. So we got to try to give people grace. Literally, they're doing this for their first time around this journey too. Nobody's one upping you. I mean, maybe years and experiences you could say could give you more, but we still are learning new things every single day, regardless of the experiences and the time we've had. So we kind of just have to be considerate. I think that's a good motto. But I'll tell you the story of a little bit of the day that my dad passed away, because I think it's just such a story that really set up to how my life went. So, and not a lot of people know this. So, right before my dad had passed away, I'm in my 20s, and I actually lived with my husband. We weren't married. And I decided to break up with him then. And I had moved out of the where we lived, the house we lived in, and I got my own apartment. And at that time, I thought that that was the end for us. But I was a little, you know, I felt like we lived together. I know that's not what people do. If you grew up, like I said, I grew up Mormon or a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, but I was not an active member. So living with someone before marriage is not what you would be doing, but I was. And I left, but it was everyone really like family, friends. I mean, it was kind of at that time where we should probably have gotten married. And that was like really scary to me. And I definitely wasn't ready. And then I broke up with him and got my own apartment. But I didn't really I wasn't ready to tell my family yet, but my dad was my best friend, so my dad knew that I moved out. But he was the only one that knew. And my parents were still married. It was just I wasn't ready to have that conversation. I didn't really want my grandmother to know. I know she really wanted me to get married and anyways, so there was a weekend that my ex, so it's my ex-husband at this time is my ex-boyfriend, and he says, "Just let's go camping. Let's go up to the mountains for the weekend." And the whole idea was just kinda to win me back. And I was like, "Of course." I mean, we went camping all the time. I was like, "Fine, love it, let's go." But I during that trip, we went up for the weekend and we went to American Fort Canyon and it then, like, where we were, we didn't have service. So, we didn't have a service all weekend, which was fine. I didn't tell anyone. Honestly, looking back, I think that my dad knew and that was it, that we were going up camping. I didn't really mention it to my mom or anyone else. And we go up camping and the whole weekend, I'm trying to reflect, like, am I gonna stay with this man? Knowing in my head, like, if I got back with him, that would be our route, right? We'd be on the trajectory towards marriage. But after that weekend, as kind as he was that weekend and how great he is as a human being, I was sure that I didn't think it was the right thing for me to get back together. So after the trip, I didn't really mention it just then. We were kind of going back and forth, and I was just, I don't know. I don't know. We drive down the mountain, and you know how it is when you suddenly get service. If you've been receiving caller text, your phone starts blowing up. My phone starts going off pretty a lot, and for me, just having, a boyfriend, like, there wasn't that many people, hitting me up, and I look, and I have all these missed calls and voicemails, and I see a text message from somebody that was kind of like a family friend, and it says, "I'm so sorry to hear about your dad." And just saying it now, it puts a pit in my stomach. I immediately, like, look at my voicemails and see that my mom had called and left a voicemail, asked me to call her back. I pick up the phone, of course, right then, call her back. I just say, "Mom, what happened to dad?" And she doesn't know why I know, no one said anything. She's like, "What do you know?" I said, "What happened to dad?" And she told me. We were in the car down the mountain and oh, gee, I didn't yeah. We were in the car going down the mountain and we pulled over and I just couldn't even contain myself. I had I had the experience of losing my very best friend, and I would not wish that sadness and grief on anyone. I think we probably all lost someone that we loved at some point in time, and that's just part of life. But I felt too young myself. I felt like he was too young, and I definitely had no clue that this was coming. So it was very overwhelming to just even process for me, especially because he was just him and I were so close, and I just wanted to talk to him about this, but it was him. So, kinda going into, like, the rest of I mean, everyone knows how hard death is at some point. Obviously, when it's a close family member, there's a lot of things that you have to navigate as far as the funeral and everyone involved. But I coincidentally, my ex had lost his brother the year prior to this. So, he was very familiar to grief in the way that I was feeling it. And so, he was a huge support system in that whole process for me. And I think I might have mentioned it before, but even, knowing what a great man my father was and appreciating who he was so much, thinking about spending my life with someone that didn't know my father was very, like, unrealistic to me. I wanted to carry on having conversations about him with someone that knew who I was talking about. And that experience and the timing of everything kind of pushed me in the direction of getting back and staying in a relationship with my ex. And I'm not at all saying that's the only reason that we ended up together, but at the end of the day, I know that influence of that time, if that hadn't have happened, I couldn't tell you that we would've. And I truly believe there's a purpose for all of the things that we experience, and I absolutely have to give 100% props and appreciation for my ex for being the rock that he was during me processing that grief. I'm so very grateful for that. But I can't say I don't think about that and how that kind of shifted the direction and the trajectory of the decisions I made at that time in my life. And so I guess I say that all to say is that looking back, there was just so many things I probably should have, could have managed differently. But when you're grieving anything in life, I think you're just kind of, we're already just trying to figure it out, but that's even the harder time where you're just like, I don't know, my everything is up in the air. So I also think to say that maybe that's why I allow to give people more grace is because I know I already don't know what I'm doing in life, but even less when I'm dealing with difficult emotions that I am trying to navigate. It's almost like instead of just hiking up the mountain on a sunny day, you're like fully drenched in wet clothes and it's raining and it's thunderstorms and it's muddy and you're slipping everywhere and you're just trying to keep trekking, but you're literally exhausted and weighted down from everything that's going on while you're trying to just navigate and life just keeps moving on. And so it's such a different, that's literally like what it's like to me is hiking in the rain, soaking wet, opposed to just a sunny day with great weather. You just get there differently and it's just harder to keep going. And I guess I say all that to say that understanding that we're all gonna have those times where where the weather isn't ideal and we still have to make it up the mountain. And I swear, like they say, it makes the sunny days and the sunny hiking trails even better. You appreciate them even more. But I think you're, like, better at life once you've hiked it in the mud and storm because you appreciate the sunshine, and you've also gained all that strength from the weight of those emotions and that feeling and still just getting through life and trekking up. There's wow, I got through this kind of moment, whether you wanted to or not, right? I had no choice. I mean, my dad was gone. The only choice was to continue living my life. But, and maybe I made choices in that moment that changed the direction of my life because those were the only ones I knew I could make given the weight that I already had on me. I just couldn't take any more. And until going through this divorce, I hadn't felt those same extremely weighted down emotions. Okay, maybe that's not true. I had one other time about a scenario I haven't discussed, but outside of that, it's only been a few times in which I felt so weighted down. So, if you're feeling weighted down right now, if you're going through things that it feel just heavy that you're just like, "Oh my gosh, I have to trek through." Just know you'll trek through and you might not make all of your best decisions in those moments because 'cause you're just trying to make it through, but you're gonna get there, and the sun's gonna be beautiful, and it's gonna be fine, and there's gonna be a purpose and a reason for all of it on the other side. I am so happy to be in Tennessee. I would not change one decision. I don't think wa for one moment that I wish I was back in my old life, not 1 second. I don't know if I would have had the courage to make these big decisions, to leave everything I've ever known, to come here and be exactly where I'm supposed to be, had not I had the challenges and faced the things that I did. I feel like it was, like, preparing me to say, "Look, Heather, you lost your dad, his midlife. Do what you want to do. Choose the life you wanna live, even if it's uncomfortable while you're doing it, because staying in comfort, if it doesn't fulfill you, really, you're just wasting days." And I think if we all kind of go into that mindset, at least sometimes or as much as we possibly can, there's a little bit less to be angry about too. Because who wants to waste any amount of time when it's so limited on being angry or not forgiving or, and I think that's why even with my ex, I have no anger about anything that happened with us. It was all supposed to happen. And there's things that I could hold on to if I thought it was going to do me any good, but nothing is going to do me any good by holding on to some kind of anger or resentment. It will just hold me back. I feel like it's the same. I keep using this analogy, but really that's the wandering the wild mess, like extra baggage in your pack. It's just heavy. Just don't take it with you. You got a lot hopefully, if you're lucky, you have a lot more mountain to climb, and holding on to things that don't do anything but weigh you down is just it kinda seems a little I don't know, like, if you really think about it, would you bring something extra that adds no value to the trek up in your pack up the mountain? Absolutely not. You'd say, "You know what? We need to let that go. I'm not bringing that with me." So if we apply that same logic to life and going through the journey, I think you just say, "I'm good with letting that go. It happened, but I don't need to carry it with me into this new place. I don't need to carry it with me up this new mountain or this new hill or this new trek that I'm going on." Like it was there and now it's not. And it just makes everything in life feel easier. And I'll go just kind of back to the song that I talked about. Zach Bryan's "The Greatest Day of My Life." Sometimes I remember that song was playing, ironically, when me and Banks, my pup, best thing in the world, and the line that says, "Healthy dog that hugs me when I'm home." We're driving on our way to close on our home. At this time, I'm in like Berry Hill in this Airbnb. Me and Banks buying a home in Hendersonville, and we're driving, and this song's on, just plays when I plug in my phone. And it was just such a happy moment. Like life is just this beautiful mess. And I'm so grateful for every opportunity to get to do anything that I get to do. Everything is, there's just so much gratitude in my heart. And I think, like, and maybe this sounds a little cheesy, but I feel like my dad planted it there. Like, I always was a fairly grateful and positive person, but being here in Tennessee and allowing myself to kind of just feel so many different emotions and not have the weight of my past life in my face or around me all the time has really just allowed me to, like, see more clearly. So I think sometimes, like, when we're holding on to things, it's holding us back from all of the great gratitude and all of the beautiful things inside of us because it's kinda like we've muddied ourselves up with this unnecessary mess, mud, dirt, doesn't need to be there, and when we just get rid of it, we're, like, cleansed, and it's like a whole new person. So, this maybe kinda seems like a therapy session for me and for y'all, but what I want to kinda end this with is if you're carrying anything with you that's not serving you up the mountaintop, let it go and choose to just live the life that you wanna live, even when it's uncomfortable, because comfort isn't living, it's just familiar. And don't get me wrong, not everyone wants to be in a wild mess and chaos. I think some lives have them in different, there's a spectrum of, how much chaos you can tolerate and what you want to do with it. But I think if you're just staying in comfort to just stay there, but you don't want to, think about it. Think about taking the leap somewhere else. Think about letting yourself have the greatest day of your life. What does that look like? And if it's staying exactly where you are, do that. But if it's anything else, try it. Because life is unfortunately way too short for some of the best people. And we just don't know if it's us. We won't know when our card's pulled. That's a crazy thought. And I know it's wild to me because we all know that, but we still don't live each day like we know that. Not all of us, at least. I can't speak for everyone. I know there's days I don't, but I'm working so hard on just saying yes to every new experience and trying everything and just letting life guide me and fulfill me in ways I never even knew I would consider if you would have asked me a couple years ago. It's just two completely different mindsets. So if any of this sounds a little crazy and wild to you, like what planet is she on or literally what's she on, which is nothing. I'm literally just a little bit high on life because it's just so much gratitude. So I'll end it at that. This is the greatest day of my life. I try to live all of them like they are, but some days are better than others. So let's just go seize the day, however much is left of it, of our day today. And I am so very grateful you sat here and listened to this wild mess of mine. This was Wandering the Wild Mess with Heather Morgan. Have a great day.